everything I believe in is informed by God, such that when I see Iron Dome operating and I see the insane percentage of success that we have, I do see some smart people that have been working on it, but I firmly believe that without God Almighty's oversight, then the system would not operate as well as it does. I cannot look at the performance of the system in rain or shine, in combat conditions, when there is no other system in the world that has even 5% of the intercepts of Iron Dome, and not see God.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have an incredible guest. His name is Ari Sachar, and Ari is actually a rocket scientist. So it's a little intimidating to be speaking to this rocket scientist. You know, we always talk about rocket science being this incredibly smart field. Ari is involved in Israel's defense system. He was a primary engineer in the Iron Dome. He has spoken to countless of lawmakers in the U.S. about Israel and U.S. defense collaboration. And he lives in Israel with his wife and children and grandchildren. Thank you, Ari, so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So first of all, can you tell us what is a rocket scientist?
Oh, what is a rocket scientist? I hadn't the faintest idea until I started actually doing it. But when I went to university, I just studied electrical engineering, thinking that it would get me into some job. And I finished my studies in 1991, just after Saddam Hussein had decided that me and my family must die. And we said otherwise, as did the United States of America. And after the war was over, I thought this whole idea of shooting down rockets in the sky was a really cool idea. And I always loved airplanes. So I thought, this is great. This is kind of fortuitous. So I applied and I was accepted, and I had no idea what I was going to get into, because I know stuff now that I never knew then. Because we in Israel, we don't do the compartmentalization. You do this part, and you do this part, and you do this part. I'm what's called a system engineer, which means I got to know a little bit about a lot. I got to know about the things that go boom. I got to know about the electronics. I got to know about the computers. Got to know about the mechanics. And you put it all together, and the whole thing you want to do is get a bomb from point A to point B as precisely as you can. And that's what I do for a living.
Okay, and those bombs that you get are to protect us.
Not everything is on the protection side. We all know that with gifts, it's better to give than to receive.
Right, that's true.
Shomer matanos yichye, he who hates gifts will live, and we have intelligent people making missile defense systems, just like we have fairly intelligent people making weapons that fly 100 miles and go through a particular window into a meeting room where a bunch of high-ranking Hezbollah functionaries are meeting. So we have both kinds, sure.
So you're involved with all of that, all parts of that?
I'd spent a long time in missile defense. Recently, I've moved into, I can't call it missile offense because that's really not the opposite of missile defense, but I've been on the giving end for the last couple of years.
Were you involved with the Pagers at all?
So the Patriot, funny enough, is actually not an Israeli missile. Patriot is actually...
No, I meant the Pagers that blew up.
Oh, the Pagers.
The Pagers,
yeah. I couldn't tell you, and if I could tell you, I'd have to kill myself.
Okay.
There are certain times in this interview that I'm going to pass on the answer.
Okay, no problem. So, tell us a little about the Iron Dome. I mean, I know you were involved in were you involved in the follow-up other domes, the Arrow and the other?
So here's the thing. In Israel, we have what's called a multi-layer missile defense system. And you would think there's really one way to slay a cat, right? To skin a cat. If there's a missile coming in, then you have a system that works like Iron Dome, then use it. Why develop another system? And the answer is clear, because the more systems that we develop, the more money we get. No, the more systems that we develop, the easier it is to take out a bad boy. And let me explain. If you want to intercept a missile, it is very similar to catching a ball. The further you want to throw the ball, the higher and faster it has to fly. If you're throwing out the opening pitch on opening day and you're a former president, you're going to throw the ball like this and it's going to make it to home plate. But if you're a shortstop and there's a force play at home and you're going to fire the ball at home, it's going to go faster. And if there's a high fly to the right field corner and you want to hit somebody who's tagging up, then you're going to throw the ball even higher and faster. Conversely, the higher and faster the ball flies, the more difficult it is to catch. Same thing with the missile, with the rocket that's coming in. The further you shoot your rocket, then the higher and faster it has to fly to get to you. So we have, Baruch Hashem, thank God, friends and neighbors from all around that want to share share their joy with us. And our friends from Gaza and Lebanon are the closest. And that's actually the easy stuff. The further you move away from Israel, Syria, Iraq, Iran, that's the hard stuff. So Iron Dome, believe it or not, was made to take out the easy stuff. What we do is we divide the sky into layers. So our missile defense, like ogres, have layers, and the layer that takes care of the easy stuff up to about 40 miles or so, that's Iron Dome. If they fire something that's coming in even further, then Iron Dome will operate with less than full capability. And so we use the next layer up, and that's David's Sling. That's
Mhm.
also made by Raphael, my company, and I also had a part in David's Sling. We actually developed that together with a small American company. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Raytheon, and my job was to manage Raytheon, and thank God that was a very successful program as well. If it's coming in too high and too fast for David's Sling, then we'll move up the ladder. We'll go to something called Arrow 2, and that's produced by another company called Israel Aircraft Industries. It's one of our chief competitors. And above Arrow 2 is Arrow 3, and
Mhm.
above Arrow 3 is actually Arrow 4, and above Arrow 4 is God himself, and he's taking care of all of this stuff, puts it all together. And we have a control system that actually determines who's shooting what at who and which system we got to use and which battery we got to use. Like, oh, they're firing 3 rockets from Iran into Haifa, so we're going to take it out with an Arrow 3 battery that's sitting over here, and we're going to fire off a couple of Arrow 2 shots just in case the Arrow 3 misses, and it puts it all together. And it makes what's called a seamless multi-layer missile defense system. And that is what we have operating over the state of Israel right now. Unfortunately,
Wow.
we are the only country in the world that needs it. Because we need
Mhm.
it, we do it pretty good.
So there's like the short range, the medium range, and the long range, I guess, and everyone's
Yes,
working in tandem with each other to figure out which range missile has to go in
exactly.
effect. Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So it's very interesting that I know you've said, as a rocket scientist, you said, as a person who believes in God, I see the Iron Dome as a manifestation of God. And I found that so fascinating because here you're working with rocket science. You're working with as you just explained, you have to be very clear. How far is it going? How fast is it going? There's a lot of science involved there. And we're not letting chance take any play here. You're very explicit and very exact in your calculations. So what role does God play here?
God plays a critical role. And if you ask me that question and you ask another person who I work, then perhaps he doesn't believe in God, then he'll give you a completely different answer. And my answer is based on what I call an axiomatic belief of God. I believe that God exists. I believe that this God gave the Torah to the children of Israel at Mount Sinai, and everything that I experience is essentially shined on by those axioms. And it turns out that everything in life needs axioms, even simple geometry. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. How do I
Mhm.
know? I don't know. There could be some line that goes like this. I wrote this article in a book called Elevator Pitches for God. Have you ever heard of it?
I did,
So it's an
yes.
interesting book that came out. So I'm in there too. And they said, can you prove the existence of God on an elevator ride from the whatever floor to another floor? And I said, no, I can't. But I can tell you why I believe in God. How do I know that the shortest distance between the second floor and the fifth floor goes through the third floor. Maybe it goes to the 79th floor and it comes down. You don't know, but I accept it. That's my axiomatic belief. And once I accept that belief and a number of other axioms in geometry, then whoo, the whole world opens to me. The same
Mhm.
thing with God. Everything I believe in is informed by God, such that when I see Iron Dome operating and I see the insane percentage of success that we have, I do see some smart people that have been working on it, but I firmly believe that without God Almighty's oversight, then the system would not operate as well as it does. Sometimes I tell a story of I received a WhatsApp message in 2014 in Operation Protective Edge. And it was one of these long messages. And you know how long it was? It said, read more.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
never clicked that button. That's a
Okay.
sign from God that you don't want to read this message.
Right.
It's a real waste of time. But I said, what the heck? And I just read it. And this, it was a really cool story. It was a story by this guy, and he claimed to be an officer in Iron Dome, and he was protecting Tel Aviv, and the Gazans fired off a rocket at Tel Aviv. And to make a long story short, they fired off 3 Iron Dome interceptors, and all of them missed. And right before the missile from Gaza hit Tel Aviv, the Azrieli Center, no less, which is this super highly packed shopping mall, train station,
Hmm.
you name it. A wind came, whoosh, and a wind came, and
Wow.
it blew that rocket into the ocean. And I always ask the people who are listening to the story, do you believe that happened or not? And my statistics, and I've spoken to thousands of people, told them this story, and a full 3/4, perhaps even more, of the people believe it, and nearly 100% of the clergy. And I've spoken to all shapes and sizes of clergy, and they all believe it. And the answer eventually is, sorry, Virginia, there's no Santa Claus. That couldn't have happened, and I explained why it couldn't have happened. And I said the problem is that we're all looking for the miracle in the time that the Iron Dome didn't work. But you're not looking at the miracles in all of the thousands of times that it did work. And we're all looking for God, I claim, in the wrong places. We're looking for what I like to call Passover miracles, the
Hmm.
fire, the brimstone, the shock, and the awe. I mean, God's there, but He's not only there.
Hmm.
I urge people, encourage them to look at the Purim miracles, the story of the book of Esther, and how so many coincidences. A friend of mine did an analysis, like 13 coincidences, that if
Hmm.
one of them just doesn't so happen, then the whole miracle of Purim doesn't happen, and we're having this conversation in Persian. And for this reason, the name of God isn't mentioned in the book of Esther, because you can't look at one spot in the book of Esther and say, ha, there's God. But you can't zoom out and look holistically at the book
Hmm.
of Esther and not see God. Well, I say the same thing with Iron Dome. I cannot look at the performance of the system in rain or shine, in combat conditions, when there is no other system in the world that has even 5% of the intercepts of Iron Dome, and not see God. I do.
Hmm.
That's the way I was built. That's the way I operate.
So you don't look at the Iron Dome and say, "Oh, this is ingenuity, this is success, this is brilliance of the Israeli scientists who have been working on it." You look at it and you say, "This is them, but with God?" How do you see that?
I say that God helped man to
Mm,
create Iron Dome, but even if man had created a wonderful Iron Dome, and there's a bunch of my friends out there that are really, really smart. I mean, I am dust to their feet, and they created a really cool system, really out of the box, and it does things that you never expected it to do, and it does it at a really low cost, which is really cool. And but the fact that the system works all the time, you cannot bias the odds in your favor that much. And there are
mhm,
people, there was a guy who he was responsible for the control system. He has a company responsible for the control system of Iron Dome. And so really uses supercomputers, and there's a million of our guys hitting a million of those guys. And if two of our guys go to one of the bad guys, that means one of the bad guys doesn't have one of the good guys on it, and he's going to get through. But it doesn't happen because we have these supercomputers, which this friend of mine is responsible for. And he got on YouTube, and he was telling everybody how he believes it was the hand of God that was Iron Dome.
Mm,
And other people that I work with actually got angry at him and said, "You're denigrating the scientists
mm,
that worked on it." He said, "No, I'm not." He said, "They're the scientists that worked on it were tremendously intelligent people, remarkable people. And yes, without the hand of God, Iron Dome's not going to work." And I don't think
mm.
these are contradictory statements. I'm on
That's
the same
beautiful.
page.
That's great. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
remember hearing a talk from you many, many years ago in Delaware by my cousins, the Vogels, where you were to Chuni, Rabbi Chuni Vogel, where you were talking there and how you were saying then even the fact that you decided to work on the Iron Dome, like there was a lot of different things that and possibilities that you could have worked on, and the fact that you chose that to work on the Iron Dome and to work on it in the way that you did and the different particulars and choices that were made at the time, that alone was like a miracle.
The fact that the system we actually built the system while we built two systems simultaneously because we didn't know which was going to work, and the rockets are raining down in the backyard all the time, and you really have no idea what's going to work. And so we're building two systems, sometimes even more simultaneously, and somehow everything converges to the way it needed to converge to. I mean,
Mhm.
that's insane. That's a program that I wanted to work on. I wanted to work in missile defense because I wanted to. I wanted my family's under rocket fire, and I wanted to fight back, and that was the best way that I could fight back. Little did I realize that this system has given me more of an insight into godliness and miracles than
Mhm.
any other system that I've worked on, and I've worked on a lot of very very cool systems, but this is just insane.
Why is it? Because of how all the particulars are coming together in such a favorable way?
It reminds me a lot of of the Book of Esther. If you look at
Mm,
the things that had to happen, the it just so happens that the king has a party. It just so happens that his wife doesn't come when he asks, and it just so happens he listens to his buddy Memuchan and he puts her to death. It just so happens that of all the women in the entire Persia, he chooses Esther, whose husband slash uncle Mordecai happens to be sitting. All of these just so happens, and if one of them just my favorite part in the Megillah, I read the Megillah every year, tons of times, and I never hesitate to have a tingle in my body when the king is awake and he's reading through the Chronicles, and we hear that this Mordecai Jewish guy saved him from a plot by Bigtan and Teresh, and what happened to this guy? What do we do for him? Nothing. And then the king says, "Wait a minute, who's outside in the courtyard?" And the Megillah says, and Haman had come to tell the king to kill Mordecai and hang him on his gallows. That is such that is it's not even irony. It's a succession of coincidences, and I can't help but get goosebumps every time I read it. Same thing with Iron Dome. In order to intercept the bad guy, you have to be able to detect the bad guy. You have to be able to determine where it's going to fall. You have to be able to fire your interceptor. You have to be able to finagle your interceptor so you're coming head on. You have to be able to fly close enough to the guy so you can really reach out and touch it. You have to detonate your warhead very, very close to his warhead such that the shrapnel that's covering your warhead flies into him and penetrates. If one of these things doesn't happen, the whole thing doesn't happen. And we're carrying on this conversation in Persian. And
right, wow.
the similarities are really striking.
Did you always believe in God?
I am what is called FFB. I was frum from birth. I was born religious, so I had a leg over. I always believed in God, and my father told me there's something out there called the confirmation bias. I even talk about that in my little blurb in elevator pitches for God. Confirmation bias. It was really publicized by Danny Kahneman, who an Israeli, erstwhile Israeli, who won the Nobel Prize, and it essentially says that whatever you see will only strengthen your pre-existing beliefs.
Mm,
And if I believe in God, then I am lucky enough that everything I see strengthens my belief in God. Imagine if you have a person, God forbid, a shooter walks into school and he shoots up a class, and then he's shot by a guard and killed by a guard. So anybody who's for gun control says, "Hey, look what happened. He had this shooter. He
mm,
walked into a class, and because of his gun, he killed kids." That just serves to back up my position. And the other people who are against gun control said that if that watchman at school, that guard at school, didn't have a gun, then that shooter would have killed more children. So
mm,
everybody looks at what they see and it interprets it in a way that backs up what they think, which is why I find it very, very difficult to engage in arguments with people over extremely important topics, because the amount of times that I have changed someone's mind and the amount of times that he or she has changed my mind is very, very close to zero. And I think if you think
Mm,
candidly about your life, how many times did you really convince a person not just to take another look, but did you convince them, whoa, you're right? Very,
mhm,
very rare.
mhm.
They'll take your arguments and they'll say, ha ha, see, you're even arguing in a way that bolsters my point of view.
But on the other hand, we could grow. We can grow in our beliefs. I mean, you're not negating that.
Oh, how unhuman that is. It's humans really like to they like to stick their heads in the sand and they like to continue down a path. That's why I believe that that repentance is supernatural as well. I mean,
Mm,
the fact that God accepts our repentance, okay, that's great. That's divine. But the fact that a human being, instead of justifying his sins, can stand up and say, "I was wrong. I sinned. I need to change." That, in my opinion, is a divine spark as well.
hmm. Wow, that's very interesting. When rockets come, when you hear the siren going off in Israel, what do you do?
What I happen to live
Or
in
what?
a
And even more, what do you feel? What are you feeling?
I was unlucky enough to be living in the north from September the 18th, when things really went south with Hezbollah, until the ceasefire in January. And I happened to work in a factory, in a missile factory in the north, which was a very major target. In fact, if you look at my company, Raphael's offices from 40,000 feet, you'll see a big bullseye on it. And regularly, we would, before we even heard the alarm, we'd hear a and that was an interceptor right next. There's an Iron Dome battery right next to the to my office to make sure that we were protected, and we'd run for the bomb shelters before then. I did not feel pride. I felt
Mhm,
fear. I felt anger. I think it was expected that Iron Dome's going to work, and I can tell you that one of the few times that it didn't work when it was meant to defend the town that I'm sitting in right now. There were a bunch of rockets, September 22nd, and rockets were fired on Raphael. And we were sitting in synagogue and shul in the morning, and the alarm goes off. And of course, there's not enough room in the bomb shelter for all the people that are at that synagogue to go into. So I lay on the floor and covered my head with my hands. And I heard an explosion, the likes of I had never heard before in my life. And I've heard a lot of explosions. I get paid to listen to explosions. I enjoy them. This one I did
mhm,
not, and we knew that rockets had fallen in Moreshet. We as soon as we didn't count to 10 minutes. We got up and wanted to see what was going on. Went out to this overlook, which overlooks my house and a number of houses next to it. 2 houses down, 3 houses down, and 4 houses down. The houses are on fire. There's 40, 50 meters in the air. There's fire and smoke. And I'm thinking, nobody gets out of those houses alive. It turns out that a rocket had hit between those 2 houses. That rocket was carrying 200 pounds of TNT. 200 pounds of
mhm,
TNT will put a crimp in your afternoon. About 20 meters away, another rocket had fallen that had done the same thing to another building. It had also, fortunately, it landed in the road and it didn't land next to the building like the one next to my house did. And it just, from the blast, it blew a car into the air. I walked past the building and there was a car that was parked in front of the house. How do I know? Because when I walked past the house, over the you could see that the car had gone over the fence and it was lying upside down in the front lawn. Um, Iron Dome didn't work that day. We took 3 rockets. Thank God, not one person even suffered one scratch. I mean,
mhm,
yes, it was the hand of God that saved us, and on the other hand, God decided that we need to be hit, and so we were hit, and we escaped from it. And there's a tremendous amount of post-traumatic stress, PTSD, in Israel proper and in Moreshet in particular.
mhm,
And there was anger and a sense of why. but everything that God does is for the best, and we're a better country since we've won that war.
Mm.
Lebanon is a much safer place. It'll continue being safer. We've set off. The Lebanese people now are the ones that are leading the charge to get rid of Hezbollah. And whatever God did is for whatever reasons He did. I don't feel pride. I don't think anybody who works
Mm.
in Iron Dome feels pride anymore. We feel anger and a
A
sense
a
of
anger of what? Anger at whom?
at ourselves and letting people down every time it doesn't work, and it doesn't
Mhm.
often not work. Same
Mhm.
thing that when someone's trying to use a weapon that I'm working on now to try to take out a Hezbollah operative or a Hamas operative who has a gun who's shooting at my soldiers, and this happened, and two missiles in a row missed. Thinking, my God, how did this miss? What did we do
Mhm.
wrong? Because what we are doing has a seminal effect on the war. No pride, no pride, just high expectations, and when they're not
Mm.
met, sense of disappointment in one's self, which
So
is
it
unfortunate.
it it's interesting because 'cause I'm sensing that you're giving the credit to God when it works, but you're giving the blame to yourself when it doesn't.
How many times have you seen a baseball player hit a home run and said, "God help me do that"? And when he strikes out, he said it was God's fault. No, when you struck out, it was your fault. Give
Right,
God the credit, and when things don't work, then you can't blame God. I'm just not there.
right.
There's more than enough blame to go around, and more often than not, we figure out what happened and we correct it, and we plug holes.
Mhm.
I mean, we're learning as we go along. We've had a tremendous amount, unfortunately, of experience, and this experience has taught us how to move ahead and how to plug holes that we didn't even know existed. And now the system is better, and it's defending more people, and it's safer, and it's more effective because it didn't work.
No,
That's
what
why
were you
people ask me, what's the difference? Why is Israel the startup nation? The United States of America isn't the startup nation. And having managed Raytheon for 5 years, I can tell you the answer is very, very simple. The answer is that we in Israel are not afraid to fail. In the
Mhm.
United States of America missile defense, if you fail, you will have your funding removed, and therefore they take flight tests that are very, very easy, benign, as if there's such a thing as an easy flight test, benign, right in the middle of the envelope. We in Israel, we don't do that. We
Mm.
try pushing the edge of the envelope, and if we miss, and if it doesn't work, then until the instant that it didn't work, we learn, and then because we learn, because we're willing to fail, we're able to learn things that we wouldn't be able to do had we not been willing to fail. That's
Right,
that's Israel
that's
in a nutshell.
important. Right, that's important. For someone who's listening to this and who's hearing that you see the hand of God in everything that you all around you, is this true in your life in general? You see God's hand guiding you, directing you?
I see not only God directing me, I see God directing the world. I see God. I mean, just look at what happened in October the 7th. I mean, what happened was horrific. We got PTSD on October the 8th. Never before had the Jewish people had that kind of actions, had that kind of murder, rape. I didn't want to talk about what happened.
Horrific.
And you're thinking, what kind of God would let that happen? People were asking the same questions about where was God in the Holocaust, where was God on October the 7th, and the answer, by
Mhm,
the way, is the same. The question is, where was man in the Holocaust, and where was man on October the 7th? You're
mhm,
thinking, what is God doing? And as time went on, it became patently obvious to me that there are large tectonic plates that are in motion, and I cannot deign, from my earthly point of view, to
mhm.
understand what was going on, but I believed that God is doing something that is necessary either to teach us a lesson or to change the world in a certain way. The Talmud talks about the days before the Messiah comes, and rabbis say, I don't want to be there. Let me read about it in a book. I don't want to
Mm,
be there because bad things
mm,
are going to happen. Because in order to take a universe at a certain initial point and move it to a point that it needs to get to, sometimes the road is not a road that is easily traveled. But if I'm looking back now, only a year and a half, I see things that could not justify October the 7th, but can make me understand that not everything is worse than it was on October the 6th. We've had the threat from Hamas a not an existential threat, but very close to that from Hezbollah, which is gone. Hezbollah is gone. Syria, the state formerly known as Syria, is gone, and that's preventing Iranian arms from crossing into Lebanon and rearming Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran, we totally took out Iran. Iran right now, we destroyed its we did it was us. We destroyed their radars of their strategic missile defense, such that it is the equivalent of a me going into your house and stealing the keys to your house,
Hmm.
such that I can go in anytime I want to and take anything I want to from your house because I have the key. Same thing with Israel. And the kind of safety, the kind of potential for long term safety, the potential for Iran's murderous nuclear program. And it is a program that is not peaceful, it is meant to kill people, specifically the Jews living in Israel. The fact that that is on the verge of being destroyed. Um, I was incapable of thinking such things on October the 6th. Now, does that
Hmm.
justify anything that happened? God forbid. Does Hamas say we were tools in the hand of God? No. But do I see God moving tectonic plates, moving celestial pieces? Oh, absolutely, I do.
Wow, that's beautiful. How do you think someone could apply God in their own life? I mean, someone who's listening to this and hearing how you see God so evident in your own life in this cosmic kind of way as well as a personal kind of way. What if someone wants to apply God in their life? How should they look for him? How should they look for this hand of God?
I don't think it's as much looking for him as letting him in. I think a story about the Kutzker Rebbe once is told, and he said, "Where is God?" And the answer is anywhere you let him. If you leave an opportunity, the potential for godliness, and stop saying, "No, no, it can't possibly be," then I promise you that things that you see, you'll begin to see differently. And you'll begin to see God because you're allowing yourself to see God. I believe that people that don't see God because they don't want to, and they convince themselves that there is no God. And because they've convinced themselves, they have this axiomatic belief now that there is
Mhm.
no God, then the confirmation bias, everything they see will confirm that there is no God. If you leave potential for godliness in God, then God will fill it by definition. And then your life will continue to get better and better because everything you see, there will be more and more godliness that you see just to confirm everything that you believe in.
Hmm. That's a
God
great way.
forbid that I'm wrong. God forbid I'm wrong. You heard of Pascal's wager? Blaise Pascal was asked to prove whether or not he believes in God. He said, "I don't know, but here's the story. If I believe in God and there isn't a God, then I lived a great life. But if I don't believe a God and there is a God, I'm in deep trouble." And it makes more sense to believe in God and to act accordingly. So I believe that not only is God shining and leading me in my life and leading the Jewish people, but I believe that God forbid, even if I'm wrong, then I have lived a life of godliness. And
Hmm.
that is more than I could ever have asked for.
Hmm. Wow. I know in addition to you being this rocket scientist with this very important job and very important career working on defending us, you also like to share your Torah studies. What motivates you to share your Torah knowledge?
Huh. I I have been. The truth is, what motivated me was we were living in Surfers Paradise, Gold Coast, for about 2.5 years, 2000, and there wasn't a lot of Torah floating around. There was the rabbi, a Chabad rabbi there, by Rabbi Gorovich, and he's still there. And I wanted to give people another viewpoint. There's so many 70 different ways of looking at Judaism, and here's another person who can also speak a little bit of Torah. And I started giving a weekly class, and then I started writing it down, and I've been doing that for pretty much since the summer of 2000,
Hmm.
and writing up something every week. About 10, 12 years ago, I started, I would send it out to a mailing list, but then I started uploading it to the Times of Israel. So I call it Rocket Torah.
Hmm.
Why? because I try looking at the Torah in a different way, in a way that a rocket scientist might look at it. Have, I talk about science, a little bit of math, history, politics, and it all merges in the same direction. It's all and the whole point is to explain the Torah in a new and innovative way. And I've written more than 1,000 of these pieces. And when I die, years from now or whenever that might be, I don't want them to write anything on my graves that had anything to do with Iron Dome or anything like that. I just want them to mention something about. Hopefully, the Torah that I've written will outlive me.
Hmm. Well, your Iron Dome is protecting Jews, so I think that's a good thing to be writing as well. You're saving Jews, absolutely. I've read some of your Torah thoughts, and I was particularly intrigued with some of them were actually quoting the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I'm wondering what kind of inspiration you had from him.
Absolute ton. I had never been, I never experienced any kind of Chabad philosophy until I went to the coast, 2.5 years there of hearing stories and the Torah of the Rebbe that I had not heard before. I came home, and about 2 years later, I decided enough is enough. I have to start learning the Tanya, which is the written by the Alter Rebbe, the Shner Zalman of Liadi. It's I guess the cornerstone of Chabad philosophy of Hasidus of Hasidism, but it's a thinking man's Hasidism, and there's a
Mhm.
tremendous amount of really really good psychology and philosophy in there. And I read it. Not only did I read it, but I read I learned, not read, learned
Mhm.
the explanation of Rabbi Steinsaltz, who adds another layer, which, in my opinion, you can't learn the Tanya without learning Rav Steinsaltz. And then it just changed my life. It changed the way I thought. It allowed me to look at things differently. It also, before I had gone to Australia, I was my go to rabbi was Rabbi Soloveitchik, J.B. Soloveitchik, and once you learn Chabad Hasidus, you understand Rav Soloveitchik in a completely different way as well.
Mhm.
I quote the Rebbe as much as I possibly can, because I think that the Rebbe's outlook on life and the Torah of Chabad is something that is relevant, it's exciting, and it's novel.
Hmm. Can you tell us? You said it changed you. And in what way did it change you?
It opened me up to a part of me that I did not know existed. I always thought that I was this very, very dry rocket scientist, for lack of a better word. And when you learn Hasidus, then you begin to find another part of your body that, in my case, had been sort of untouched, and that was a soul.
Mm.
And begin to experience Judaism in a different way, with joy, with happiness, and everything's sentient. It's not as if, hey, we're just going to go eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And this capability of awakening that part of my soul, and once that's awakened, then you're shining a different light on everything that you see. And then you garner more experience and more insights just because you have a new point of view. Um,
Wow, that's
yeah,
beautiful.
thank you.
What inspires you?
What inspires me?
Like when you're down or when you're thinking of trying to work on a challenge, when you're working on something difficult. I mean, I'm sure there's so many parts of your life that are, you know, are not easy to be dealing with. What
So I'll answer
inspires
that
you?
question. Things that are big and things that are far away. I like going out at night and looking at the stars, thinking on the one hand how huge they are, the other hand how far away they are, on the other hand how small I am in the cosmos, but on the other hand, I'm here.
Mhm.
I like looking at mountains because their sheer size, their grandeur, and that takes my soul to another place. I find it elevating, and I find it comforting to know where I am but where I could be. It's
Mm.
it's important. Someone once said, Rabbi, I forget his name, psychologist, Rabbi Pittsburgh Tursky.
Risky.
He was discussing. He was a Chabad Chassid, also, if I'm not mistaken, and he was talking about the difference between self confidence and humility. He said a person should always be self confident, and the person who lacks self confidence will find himself with tremendous mental stress and perhaps mental illness. He believes that lack of self confidence is the source of many of man's ills.
Hmm.
Humility is not the lack of self confidence. Humility is being very, very confident in what you have, but knowing yourself so well that you know what you are capable of doing and have not yet done it.
Hmm.
And that gives you a sense of humility because yes, I've done certain things, but I'm capable of more. God has given me this capability. Let's go ahead and do it. And that's, I think, what these large mountains and planets and the sky at night does for me. It gives me a sense of humility, which I find comforting, and I find exciting in the fact that it spurs me forward.
It's also related to what you do. I mean, those missiles that go into the skies and, do amazing things in the skies, right? From you standing little you standing below.
Yeah,
That's
just try to get out of the way of anything that's going to fall from the sky.
right. Right. What about when you're stressed? How do you handle that?
Stop thinking and do. That's what I
Mhm.
do when I'm stressed. I have so much in my head, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And so you say to yourself, "Shut up and do,"
Mhm. Right.
and you do, and you'll do what you're capable of doing, and usually much more.
Mhm.
The worst part of my day is the morning. So I wake up in the morning, I think, "What do I have to do the entire day?" It's terrible. But when I get out of bed and I start my day, then I find that I'm significantly more capable of doing things than I felt when I was lying in bed.
Hmm.
Get up, do.
Do. Right. That's a good mantra. Get up and just do. I know you've spoken
Just
to a
do it.
lot
Wait
of
a minute. What if we
just
met a
do.
brand of sneakers and we
Yeah.
had this logo, just do it?
Just do. Let's
I'm
market
gonna write this down. I'm
it.
gonna make
Sounds
a
great.
fortune.
Yeah. I know you've spoken, you've come to America many times and spoken with US lawmakers, about US and Israel collaborations on defense.
Hmm.
Um, do you come as a proud Jew? Like, how do you or do you come as a scientist or both?
I don't go anywhere without my kippah.
Mhm.
And when I go out to eat with these people, I will sit and I will have a Coke. And I will not change who I am because it is politically expedient to do so. And there are people that I think I wrote about this last week. There are people that diplomats that I know that when they engage in diplomacy, they'll take off the kippah
Mhm.
because they don't want to stick out. Maybe you need to do that because that's your job, but I can't do that because it's denying who I am. I feel like I'm
Mhm.
wearing a mask. You know who I am. I know who I am. You know that I'm Orthodox, I'm Jewish, and you'll either accept me that way or you won't. And nine times out of nine, they do. And not only do they
Mhm.
accept you, but they honor you for standing up for your beliefs. So yeah, I go everywhere I go. I go with a kippah. By the way, when I go around the world, I used to walk around with a kippah all the time. There are certain places that I go now in the world that I have been told by my security not to wear a kippah, and so I went out and spent $100 on a Stetson hat, which is my new go-to hat. Um, it's still not bad in the U.S. I wear my kippah walking around in the U.S. But in Australia, for instance, I can't wear the
Right.
kippah anymore.
Wow.
It's a
Terrible.
dangerous place.
Do you ever fear for your life because of your position in your job?
I try not to think about it because when I go speaking in the U.S., um, people ask me who's providing security, and I said nobody. Why? I don't know. And there was a time that I didn't care, but this last time I was on a speaking tour for Friends of the IDF in in February, and I spoke in a shul. I spent a Shabbos in West Hartford, Connecticut, and everybody was announced. Here's Ari Sachar is going to be here, and it began to bother me for the first time. It began to bother me. I find myself being concerned about anti-Semitism for the first time in my 61 years.
Hmm. Wow. I know you go speaking for a lot of different shluchim. I mean, that's where I first heard you. What has your experience been like?
Oh my gosh. I've spoken for Chabad shluchim in probably every continent.
Wow.
Um, and I love those Shabbases. I love the people that I meet. I love the Torah that I learn, which is not my Torah. I wake up early. The best Shabbos I had was in Houston many years ago. Rabbi Lazaroff. He was teaching Basi Ligani, which is
Mhm.
another one of the Chabad masterpieces. And I got to shul early, and man, I just sat there with my eyes bugging out. This was amazing stuff. The people there were great. The Torah there was great. The atmosphere was great. It's a really great place to be. Um,
Hmm.
where was my most recent Chabad house? It was in August in Stockholm.
Hmm.
I made this bartering deal with the rabbi there. I was there on business, and I said, "Here's the." He said, would you like someone to speak? A charismatic speaker about Iron Dome? Sure. So and I also gave him a whole bunch of references. So he said, "Sure." I said, "So how much should I pay you?" I said, "Don't pay me a nickel, but just make sure that I have kosher meals 3 times a day
Oh,
for
wow.
the week that I'm there, and that'll cover everything."
Amazing. Wow.
It's
Do
always
you
been
do
a
you
little
find
piece of.
do you find that
Sorry.
people are attuned to your message of God even though you're a rocket scientist?
I think they're attuned to my message of God because I'm a rocket scientist.
Mhm. And why do you think they resonate with it?
Because they think if he can believe in God, why can't we? And I
Mhm.
think that's nonsensical, but that's the thing. That's there's some kind of aura, and I don't know. He's a rocket scientist. I don't feel that way,
Mhm.
but the fact that you can go sanctify God's name just by being who you are and doing what you do is a gift that I'm very thankful for.
Mhm. I'm wondering what your wife and children feel about your work.
They think that I spend too much time at it.
Okay. Okay. What are your plans for the future? Anything coming up? Anything new that we should be aware of or that you can tell us?
I'm missile defense wise.
Mhm.
I mean, the new big thing is the laser. Everybody's waiting for the laser that you can take this laser pointer, except it's way bigger, and shoot down a bad boy. That's coming down the line. People have been talking about it for years. That's coming down the line, and
Mhm.
that's another new piece of godliness.
Mhm.
Um, I've begun working, putting out another blog, a political blog, every week, working with an organization, working with congressmen on pro-Israel topics that have nothing to do with Iron Dome, and
Mhm.
I'll continue to speak at synagogues and the like, as long as people will be interested in listening to me. Next
Mhm.
time is in the some synagogue in Highland Park, New Jersey. Forget which one it is, and that is on May the 10th.
Hmm,
Courtesy of
nice.
Mizrahi.
Interesting. And what about personal goals? What are your personal goals that you'd like to accomplish?
My personal goals,
Mhm.
I have very few. Just give me a Gemara and I'm a Talmud, and I'm very happy. So my personal goal that I'm interested right now is finishing the Jerusalem Talmud again.
Mm.
Um, I want to learn more than I do. I
Mhm.
want to be with my children and grandchildren more than I am. I want to spend a lot less time traveling.
Mhm.
61 years, you begin to understand things that are important, the things that are less important, and I want to spend time doing the things that are more important. Torah, family, um, committing wanton acts of kindness, which I learned from my wife. She's a
Mhm.
kindness machine, and then I want to learn more from her. These are the important things.
That's beautiful. Ari Sachar, thank you so much for joining us and giving us of your time. This was really incredible.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for what you're doing for all of us, for defending the people of Israel. I think that that's a great, great mitzvah, that you should have on your tombstone after 120 and more, because that's something that is so spectacular. And to see the hand of God in all of it is beautiful. Thank you for your
Thank
perspective
you
and
very
for joining
much.
us. Wow, so it's a little intimidating to be speaking to this brilliant rocket scientist, but I felt that Ari's interview was just so down to earth, and he was so relevant to all of us, such a humble individual who sees the hand of God literally every single time in everything that's going around all around him. And I loved how he said it's not just in the big things and the big miracles. We're looking for God in the wrong things. We're looking for God in those big Pesach kind of miracles, those miracles of the splitting of the sea, the 10 plagues. But we need to start looking at God and God's hand in the small things, and things like the Purim miracles, where seems to be such so coincidences going on in our lives, but really within those coincidences is God arranging it. And this shift and this cosmic shift in reality is how he sees things going on right now. There was so many parts to this interview which I really enjoyed, but I think that was the part that I really um, related to the most. And how he said that the way that we can really find God is just letting him in. The more that you see God in your life, the more you see the hand of God, the more you confirm it, and the more that you are expecting it, and the more that you are readily able to receive it even more. If you enjoy watching these interviews, I hope you are signed up for Chabad.org/extraordinary. We are available on all podcast platforms. I hope you take us on the go. When you go somewhere, you can watch us there, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you thought of this interview. What did you learn from Ari? I thought he was just such an incredible human being, and the teachings that he has left us with were really, really a great perspective that we can bring into our own lives. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this extraordinary community.